Good afternoon, everyone from Dunrovin Ranch. It's that time of year when the snow starts breaking up and the barnyard looks a little bit ragged around the edges. We have our wonderful friend Brandon here from eastern Montana, central Montana, from the Hashknife Ranch. Howdy, Brandon.
Hi, Suzanne. Hey, everybody. How's everybody today?
We're doing great. Yeah,
Good.
things are looking well. We're getting ready for the guest ranch season, so we're starting to put our programs together. And yeah, it's an exciting time of year, as you well
Oh,
know. You
oh
must
yeah.
be ready for calving. You must be getting close to.
Yeah, it's about a month away. We tend to calve a little bit late, but I'm in that preparation mode. So that isn't something you just decide that. Yeah, let's get ready. And
Yeah, yeah.
it doesn't happen in an hour or so. So I'll take a couple days and really get things ready. And you got to move some animals around, but we'll be sharing that with you.
I hope so. I hope you do. And again, this is the kind of thing that you don't get to dictate exactly which day it starts, and who knows what the weather will be like. And you got to be ready when it comes. It's not
That's
going to wait
right.
for you. Yeah.
That's right.
Well, I hear we have a really shitty show today, Brandon. Is that right?
That is correct. That is absolutely what it is. And I
Oh,
think I even mentioned that politics may be involved because
well, the politically correct title is corral cleaning, but we all know what corral cleaning really means. It means picking up manure.
that's right. Well, and we talked last week about the feeding chores, and some of the questions were about why do you feed where you do and the way you do, and this kind of follows up. I thought this would be a good thing to show today. We were going to show it last year, and we ran out of time. And so through the magic of television, you're going to see that I've lost my winter beard in this episode, but I have that tiny little mustache that I pack around that makes my neck strong. So you'll be able to understand. It's like that doesn't look like yesterday, and it's not.
Okay. Well, we love whatever you have for us, Brandon. We always learn something, and you always take us along in the best way possible. So go ahead and let it roll, James.
Hello from the Hash Knife. Today I'm going to take you on a little bit different ride with me. Unfortunately, today I have to be a politician. I'll try not to lie to you, but this is what we're going to do. We're going to take a little bit of a asset we had, and it got transposed into something that none of us want to deal with. That stuff, which was fresh hay, and you can see it, some of it laying around the ground here, but it was transposed into that big pile throughout the winter and basically the last year, fall and winter. I'm going to use that shovel and put that pile into that bucket and take it way out there into that feed ground and spread it around. So just like any good politician, and it doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on, it's all BS. So we're gonna get rid of it and hopefully make it so it'll actually be usable. So stick with me. So let's take a closer look at our bucket. It's this is an older John Deere, and it's all mechanical. There's no shaft to hook onto a tractor. You just set it onto a pin on whatever thing that you want to use to pull. In this case, it's just a 1-ton diesel pickup because I want to pull in a little bit of comfort today. So you load up this big old bucket here, and it's really not very big by standards of manure spreaders. It's fairly small, but you've got a chain driven by wheels, and this chain here will drop down onto that sprocket. As the wheel turns, it turns, of course, got a idler sprocket there, and it turns this reel and also turns a bottom reel, and then that is connected to this kind of auger on this side from that reel to there, and this just spins it out backwards, comes this way, and this spreads it both that direction as it comes out. And how does it feed that reel? Well, this chain here on either side has these slats and just pieces of angle iron, really, that's just welded to it and bolted to the chain. And here are our controls. So this one engages all of the reels in the back, and that just fully engaged it. This one has several different settings that will give you the speed of this little conveyor belt that comes back, and it runs a little bit off of this lobe here. As that wheel turns, it hits this gearbox, and spins and turns this intermittently. It's not doing it all at the same time or continually. It's only as this wheel turns and comes around, so it's not feeding too fast. But then that's also adjusted by your linkage here, how far that's going to come down and how much closer it is to this big lobe right here. So the further away it is, it doesn't hit it for as long, and you can see how it scrapes and comes into contact with that lobe down there. If it's a lot further away, then it just hits it a little bit. So kind of ingenious, driven off the wheels, and these are pretty good shape, but they're old spoked wheels. I don't know how old this thing is for sure. I could look it up. It's old. That's probably older than I am, and that's all dang near the invention of dirt. I'm approaching that way. So we'll get a shot of once we've got it loaded and take it out and do a little bit of spreading. Show you how that goes and then what comes after that. Well, this is what the inside of this big shovel looks like. There's a lot of electronics in here. It's not complicated, but you got all kinds of levers and switches and indication of what's going on, and throttles, brakes, and then your joystick for operating the bucket, and then the forward and reverse here. So we'll start her up, just a normal key, and then gives you an indication when your glow plugs are done being preheated, because it is a diesel. There we go. Make sure any alarms clear, if there are any. All right. So far, so good. So this has got 4 reverse gears. Actually, it's got 16 reverse gears. It's got 4 gears, A, B, C, and D, and a park, and neutral. And then each one of these, you can go right into that, has another gear, and you can do that. They give you a cute little bunny and a turtle, so that you're knowing whether you're going slower or faster. And if I push on the bunny, you can see the 1 in the display, first gear. Push the bunny, there's second gear, third gear, and 4th gear. And you can hear the engine respond to that, and we're not even moving yet. So you've got 16 forward gears and 4 reverse, well, 16 reverse gears as well. I keep wanting to say 4 because of a different type of shift mechanism on another tractor. So I'm going to put this in B. It's A is the slowest and D is like a road gear. And I have placed this into our, it's not 4-wheel drive per se, it's front wheel assist is what they call it. And I don't know what that's about, whether that's a branding or what it is, but here's my joystick. You can see that. I push forward, it goes down, comes up, then I can tilt my bucket or tilt it down, and then this little toggle moves my grapple fork in and out of the way, and I don't need it for this, so I'm gonna set my bucket to about where it needs to be, and I can kind of look on the ground there, kind of set straight. I don't have to be super far down. I can pick it up a little bit. And now, gotta say go, lift the clutch gently, and we are headed for a pile of politics. Here we go. And as I come into this, I'm going to turn my bucket a little bit, lift it, so I catch as much as I can. And this is kind of nice because this is somewhat dry. You can see a little steam coming off of that. Well, that's not necessarily steam because it's about 40 degrees, but that shows you some of the byproducts of decomposition in the form of heat. And you can actually have a manure pile or too green of a hay pile, if it's hay's been put up incorrectly, have too much moisture in it, and it will decompose and it can start on fire. And you'll see some of these cows out here sometimes, they will, and I'm tipping this bucket down, just trying to drop it in here gently. You can see some of these cows will lay very close to this pile of manure when it's very cold, so there's some heat coming off of it, and they're trying to utilize that to stay warm a little bit. And I'm trying to be very gentle here, and this is kind of a pain because there's no sense in, I should put it in reverse, there's no sense in just spilling that out over on the other side. That happens anyway. So I'm going to grab another bucket full here. Go forward. And this is actually, I'm trying to do all of this one-handed for you. It's a little bit on the, it's not complicated, but it is with, we got one hand because you're using both of them at the same time doing different things. So there we go. Shows you what we can pick up. A little more. And this is actually a little slower than normal because of the one-handedness here. And I'm going to pick my bucket up a little bit. I can usually do this in about 2 bucket loads. I can fill this, which is not a lot, and you can get a bigger, much larger manure spreaders. This is an old one. It's an old gear driven job. Drives off the wheels. Archimedes would be pretty proud of this, and Da Vinci might have invented it, I don't know. But it's kind of it's a neat little marvel in ingenuity, using the chain and sprockets, all kinds of mechanical advantage to get that to roll out. And then these times I'll show you how it works as we're going along. And once again, this is slow and steady. I'm one-handed, but we'll do this anyhow. Now I'm going to try to get over on this side and load the corner of this bucket a little bit more than the other side. That way I can even my load in my manure spreader. And it certainly wouldn't be worth it for us to get a larger manure spreader because, you know, I spend a couple of days a year doing this, and the same thing with the harrow. And the harrow is just a piece of equipment that we drag on the ground behind a tractor, and it kind of just stirs up the ground. It'll spread out some of those manure deposits out there in the pasture as well from the feed ground. and just spread them around so it can break down much easier. And the hair was kind of small, the manure spreader is small. It's all small because, you know, it isn't like we're running a feedlot here and having to do this a lot, so it would not be very economical for us to get something very large and spend a lot of money on it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set my bucket flat and then just kind of make a gentle push down just to kind of pack that a little bit so that it rides well when we go out. Now we'll switch vehicles and go out and spread it. What we're looking at is a part of the pasture that we did not feed on this winter. And as you can see, it's relatively undisturbed. Grass is eaten down, of course, from last fall, but we got new grass coming in. And this line right here is where I've started to disperse some of the manure from the corral, but I've done it right over the top of some of the lighter areas where we fed. And we roll the bales out in a long line and basically pick an area of the pasture that we're going to feed on throughout the winter. And then the cows will obviously collect on there, eat, and you can see some of the areas up there in the distance that are a little heavier with the manure, where we may have had a pile of hay set or more dropped off on a bale than we expected. Those sort of things happen, and then the cows will congregate there, and of course they're going to poop right where they eat, because there's nothing clean about a cow. Honestly, they're not as clean as a hog is. Hogs are actually a very clean animal if allowed to be. Whole different discussion. But so I'm laying these areas out and kind of dispersing them with some area between for the scatter, and then I'll go over this with a harrow, and we'll cover that towards the end of the video and show you what I mean by breaking up all of the, I guess we could say, indigenous cow pies that were deposited this last winter, throughout the winter as they fed. And you can see this area of a little heavier concentration of cow poop, so I've tried to avoid that a little bit, because there's no sense in putting some on right on top of a hairy or a heavier concentrated area. And so you can see earlier we've gotten about 15 loads out of this corral, and we'll see what we end up with totally. But here's the benefit of this is in the distance. You can see over the last 3 years we have fed to the east of us there in the rest of that pasture, and it's done very nicely with providing a little bit of fertilizer and working the ground a little bit. And this is some native grass as well as some improved grass, or some crested wheatgrass, which is a really good grass for grazing and actually for hay, but we just graze this here now. So we rotate this, and in about every 5 years, then we'll go over the top of the spot we went previously. So we've got about a 5-year rotation or so on this that really helps kind of renew and keep the ground fertilized. The danger is it gets a lot of heavy traffic, so you got to be very careful about that. And that's where the harrowing comes in, to disturb the ground, kind of break up some of the clumps so it has some rhizomatous growth to the plants, and disperses and creates even a better mat of feed. Now it's time to set our levers and engage them both. And this is kind of old, so it doesn't want to hold as well. So as you can see, I've improvised a little bit with some bungee cords to hold them so that they don't come up, otherwise they will jump. And that's just some ranching ingenuity there. A couple bucks a piece for a couple of tarp straps, and you're good to go. All right, let's see what we can do and how far we can spread some politics. Yeah, we'll take off slowly. I've got this pickup geared down a little bit because See, already starting to throw some manure around, and a little shaky because with this wheel-driven chain, it really does jerk and bang you a little bit around, especially that lobe on that one. You feel the engagement of it, so you can't go too fast, but also the faster you go, the more you spread, and there's kind of a happy medium in there. It's dispersing just fine, but at the same time, we don't want to tear anything up by going too fast. Too slow, you won't get it spread out as much. And you can see our favorite cow there in the back, everybody's favorite, is Ears. She had to come over to see if there was anything to eat, of course. That's just the way she is. But look at that. And you can kind of hear things shaking. I have to slow it down just a little bit. I'm only doing probably about 4 or 5 miles an hour. So this can make for a long day, or we might work into the second day. And you know you're empty when that thing really slows down, and you'll get a little bit of left over in the back of that, the bottom, but not much. So I stack it up there pretty high. And when that happens, when you quit throwing it, you know you can stop and put your levers back and head in for another load.
I did my makeup this morning.
All right. Well, the ranch boss is going to have the comfort of a tractor and a cab, and she's going to be dragging this harrow. You can see we spread out all of the manure, and you see the lines there. And so now it's a matter of she's going to be breaking up all of these clods and stuff that are there from feeding this winter, and then spread the manure from the corrals. And then she just watches this thing, and look how it busts that up and helps fertilize the ground, stimulates some of these plants to grow by moving the root balls a little bit, tearing through them some. That all helps do that. So she's going to spend probably the rest of the day doing just this, while I go and do some other things with Braden, and then she can tell us how hard she worked afterwards.
I'm spent.
Already?
Yeah. Here we are, harrowing the field, trying to get all the clumps of poo and manure and hay and everything else that's built up. Break that stuff up. Got my 2 sidekicks. So far, so good. Okay, still at it. My rows are not very straight. However, I got quite a bit done so far.
All right, you guys, we hope you like this series, and I'm sure we'll discuss a little bit later.
Yeah, these aren't straight lines.
As long as they cover each other.
That was great, Brandon. And you've generated a lot of questions, you know.
Who knew poop could do that?
Yeah. People have seen us do that here. We have the exact same kind of manure spreader. And, you've brought up the issue of its history. Do you have any idea how old the whole concept of manure spreading is?
Oh, I don't. I can't imagine that it wouldn't be from the time we started sticking a plant in the ground. I mean, where do plants, if you observe anything, you look where, an animal has come through and laid a bunch of poop down, and there's a lot of different type of grass or plants that grow better than anything right around them. So, I mean, anybody who's observing that as a hunter-gatherer would go, I wonder if I can make my own patch of something here. So I bet you it's been thousands of years, but I don't know that.
I'm going to look it up because it interests me, because as you were saying, the mechanism itself is really quite ingenious.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly the same kind of manure spreader we have, and there's really no engine or anything like that. It's just really off of the pulling. You can pull with a team of horses and accomplish the same thing.
Same
it's
thing.
all that chain. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. And I did look. It is a 1947 model.
Ah. Yeah, well, I'm going to go out and see how old ours is. Ours might even be older.
Yeah, if you it'll say what is ours is a Series H, and it'll have the model number, and from that you can track down the model, the range of years that it should be.
Oh, well, I'm going to do that then. This is fun.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. So this was last spring. You did this
Yes.
last spring. This is a spring chore for most places. That's when we do it too.
Yeah.
And it is that combination of spreading and harrowing that really is best. If you're like me, you don't plow. And let's talk about that a little bit, about the evils of plowing versus spreading and harrowing.
Yeah, and it's all in the context of, where you can do it. I mean, plowing is a good thing if you don't lose erosion of the soil, because all you're doing is you're turning the nutrient so that your plants, you can then utilize that have come down with the water in the form of rain or snow or whatever, and it's just all dropped down through the soil. So you want to turn that soil in order to make a good nutrient base if you're going to grow a crop. Some grounds are not conducive to doing that, and this prairie here is one of them. It's just not conducive to doing that without high erosion, because it's the rare video that we talk about that you can't hear wind in. Those days are few and far between, and so wind is horrendous erosional type of force that you can't change it. You can't do anything about it, but you can change the amount of erosion if you can, as much as you can. And even doing that, just pastures, the wind still blows, it still picks up dirt, and it still deposits it to other places. It
also really disturbs the fauna of the soil.
Yep.
And I think even in crops now, people are going more and more towards no-till kinds of processes, because that soil fauna is so important to the nutrients that are kept in the soil. And one of the people asked about, the harrow is more than a set of change. It has some spikes that go in and kind of break up the manure, but it also aerates that soil.
Yes.
It doesn't turn it, but it aerates it.
Right. It just cuts through it, really, is what it does. Yep, that's correct.
Yeah, and that's an important part of all of this, is to give the soil a little bit of aeration without actually turning it over.
That's right.
It really helps the pastures. I mean, we did it this last spring, and you could see where we did it and where you didn't do it. I mean, it really makes a difference. So let's talk shit here, Brandon.
It's pure steer. This is high grade stuff. Yeah.
Well, what is the difference in the composition between cattle and horses? And which do you think has the greater benefit for the soil?
That's a very good question. Horses are very, very inefficient eaters. Mm-hmm. So, when you see a normal looking hydrated animal, you talk about a cow pie, it looks just like that. They'll drop out and it's mushy and a big wide area that flops down. Horses are little biscuits. I hear they're tasty to some kids, but just round little biscuits, because they utilize and they reabsorb the water much more than a cow does. Of course, a cow's got 3 stomachs, a horse has only got 1. So you lose a lot more nutrient back into the ground that a horse does not utilize. For instance, if you don't believe that, feed a horse a pound of oats and give it really a matter of hours. In 6-8 hours, you'll see them pooping that out the back end, And you won't see that quite as much in a cow, not near to the degree. So they utilize that much, much more. So which is better? I don't really know. I know which is easier to break up. I think the cows utilize more, but they also allow it to be broken up easier and to be more utilized. It's just compost. I joke about things like this, a branding time. Some kid or somebody will be here and, they'll have all of a sudden this green stuff on them. I say, don't worry about it. It's just wet grass. That's, so it's really all it is. But I don't know which really utilizes best, honestly, but because it both does. It probably in just different ways, one a little slower than the other.
Yeah. And your manure pile, first of all, you mentioned the issue of hay and manure fires.
Yeah.
And this is always something that people are surprised at. Decomposing in a compost pile with a lot of manure generates a huge amount of heat. Mm-hmm. And it can start fire. So tell us, has that ever happened on your ranch where you've had either a haystack or a manure pile just do spontaneous combustion?
We have not here, but it's happened around us. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things that, there's usually always a manure pile. It is. And mm-hmm. when you're a kid, you don't care what you play on. And one of the things you are told not to play on is don't play on that manure pile, because it can actually be burning if you don't do like we do every year or so, it can burn for a long time. A matter of years. It's almost like having a coal seam on fire underground. It can burn for years and nobody knows it. Mm-hmm. And if you're on there and there's that crust of the top and you fall into that, you've literally fallen into a fire, and people have been horribly, horribly burned that way. That heat it generated is substantial. So we haven't had that. My grandpa told me a story one time helping a neighbor, and the neighbor was baling his hay in a hurry, and it was way too green, and they were stacking it. And my grandpa said, "Boy, this stuff is really green. This is probably not going to work out too well. He'll have at the least a lot of mold." So being a smart aleck, my grandpa took one of the bales, and this is all small bales, stacked by hand, and he stood it on end and wedged it down there. And he says, "Well, let's give this stack a chimney." Sure enough, later on it caught on fire with spontaneous combustion, and that's just grass. So there's no manure in there that's already started to decompose to help that process along. We haven't had it here. We're just really careful about that, or try to be super careful about not allowing that or putting that hay up right or buying it put up right. But I also keep these manure piles fairly small, or every year or two I'll spread them out and get rid of them. It's nice to be able to do it yearly, because you just stay on top of it that way too and don't worry about it.
Right. We did have some hay bales in our barn one year get really hot. And it was, we noticed some that had a little bit of mold on it and started digging in that area of the haystack. And sure enough, you could definitely feel, and I think if we had left it there for any real length of time, we could have had a fire. So it's counterintuitive to people, but it happens.
Well, and that's really not very aerobic, because it's going slow. But you add a little bit of wind to that, or you open that up enough, and now you've induced oxygen. It's like blowing on a campfire that you're trying to get started, and it will take off.
Yeah, absolutely. You really have to be careful about all of this. There was something else I wanted to say here. Do you add anything to the manure pile? Do you add any kind of clippings or anything like that? It's just straight manure. It's just straight manure.
Grass clippings around the house they're just clipped and left to compost right in the yard itself. We don't bag anything and take it off. Mm-hmm. Of course, I don't do much of the lawn stuff anyway, so. Mm-hmm. But no, there's nothing added to it. Pardon me. We don't do anything to try to enhance, the breakdown of it. It just is what it is. It's just normal. As you pile it, you kind of break it up a little bit, and then as you load it into the manure spreader and spread it, it breaks it up a little bit more. And then when we harrowed it, then we went 90 degrees to the way we laid it out instead of in line with it. So it would help break it even more. And you can see, following the harrow, it breaks it up pretty fast. And then from there, and it really breaks down quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. I was wondering, Brandon, if you have been reading about or watching any of the documentaries about how in Africa, people are now using cattle for regeneration of deserts. And it really is based on what you said earlier. And that is, number one, the cattle turn the soil, and then they fertilize the soil, and you start getting grass around where the manure piles. And I've been reading that it's counterintuitive. You would think that the cattle would be destructive, but in fact, if managed properly, and they do this what's called mob grazing, where they really hit up an area and then it's left alone for a while to add those nutrients, etc. Have you been watching any of that?
I haven't been watching it, but that's kind of a practice, just like the no-till. People have been no-till farming for 30 years now. And with great success in this country. And the rest rotation is something that you try to do. You can't just put some cows out onto a piece of property and never take them off of there and let that ground have a rest. You've got to do that. The only thing you can't really control so much is wildlife. And even that is valuable because antelope will not come into a haystack. Antelope don't eat on a haystack in the wintertime. They're browsers out on sagebrush, greasewood, things like that they eat that, and that is their niche. And so they're really not really super competitive. They do eat grass, there's no doubt, but they don't eat grass all the time. So in the wintertime when the snow's covered, you can see them browsing on sagebrush. Deer, different story. They will take the grass and they take haystacks as well, but so there is some competition there, but they tend to be here and gone. They're not there all the time like the cows are, and so that's why you need to especially move those cows away from water, which is another thing we can do with you. Show you what we're doing to get those cows to move away from a certain water hole because they're lazy. They don't want to go any further than they have to, but you can induce them into using some of those other grasses so that you're rotating and really resting some of the ground that they're actually on at the time.
Yeah, I think this whole issue of using wildlife is a really important aspect of that. I mean, even the prairie dogs have some role to play, and so do sage.
No.
Well, they turn the soil.
Oh, they sure do. We'll do an episode there for you too. I hate prairie dogs. Hate them.
Okay, we'll go tooth to nail here. Okay.
Oh, you can be as wrong as you want. It's okay.
That's great. Well, we should do that sometime because this is the wonderful thing about our friendship, Brandon, is we often go tooth to nail, and we always come out of it much better for it.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. So let me, I have a question here. People are asking, when you got started with your YouTube channel, people are migrating to your YouTube channel, Brendan. They're following you. Yeah. And they want to know a little bit of history about that. And I know that Kaylin's had a big part of all this. So why don't you give us a little thumbnail sketch here? Well,
we really appreciate people coming and watching. We really do. It's neat to do that. And when Kaylin come back from Afghanistan, he was struggling a little bit and he wasn't home, and we lost his fiance to Afghanistan. So it was a bad time for him. It was really hard. And he said, we need to do something. And he's really into podcasts and listens to a lot of stuff. Yeah. He's a very smart kid and really digs into some thoughtful things, a lot of history there. That's his thing is history. And he said, you know what? He said, we need to not just complain about nobody knowing what we do or caring about what we do. He said, you were making some videos on Facebook. They showed me, God forbid, how to do that, that previous winter when I was calving and before. And he said, we could do a YouTube channel. Of course, I'm like, okay, I have no idea. that's up to you if you want to. He goes, well, let's do this. So it was his brainchild. And then from then just kind of took off, and we are passionate about things, and some things are fun. Some things are probably shouldn't be said on the worldwide stage, but you get what you pay for with us. And I don't see anybody paying us anything. So there you go.
You'd be cheap at twice the price.
Oh, that's right. That's right. No, so it was really his brainchild, and Lisa and our other son, Braden, and Braden is too. I mean, they get their smarts from their mama. There's no doubt there. She is brilliant. And, we care about what we do, and we're passionate about it. We all have our different personalities and our different approaches to it, but we make it work. And we really want people to understand that people in agriculture are not dumb people, and we're portrayed that way a lot, that we're just kind of bumpkins. Some of the smartest people I know come from the ground. Oh. And, we're hardy. We're in ingenuity is something you have to work with all the time. And we really do care about what we do. It's, it's something that you don't just turn the clock and say, okay, I'm done, so I can forget about this place for till tomorrow morning at 7:30 or 8 o'clock when I come to work. You never turn it off. It just doesn't happen.
Well, Brandon, I have to say, I think you and your family are incredible spokespeople for that way of life. Your passion for what you do and your love of every aspect of it is very, very apparent. And Kalen is just a wonderful writer and presents himself so well. I know Braden's a little more shy. He's kind of the guy behind the curtain. But tell Lisa she needs to show up more often. And I was glad to see she had her pugs at her feet. I knew she wouldn't go far without those pugs.
Oh my God, that dog, and that's my fault. It really is. We had a couple of pugs. My grandmother, my dad's mother, raised pugs and raised Siamese cats. Ah. And so I can remember as a little boy getting our first puppy, and her name was Trixie. I got to tell you this. This is funny. You guys will get a kick out of this. And I was, Trixie got to be a couple years old, and my grandma come and took her away. And I was mad. And somebody said, well, why did your grandma take her away? And I said, well, my grandma took her away to get her bread because my mom and dad are too cheap to buy any. So... But wonderful, wonderful little dogs, and she was wanting another dog. We had one of our dogs was her race had nearly been run, and so I said, let's get a little puppy and introduce him, and so we went and looked at this litter of pugs, and from a friend of mine, and Kaylin and her and I sat down, and Kaylin sat down, and I think Kaylin said, "Okay, who wants to come home with us?" And Tank is his name. He come running right over, curled up, and laid down in Kaylin's lap. And it's like, when animals choose you, that's what's important. So that's the one. And that's Tank. So we got the ranch boss, and then we got the one who runs her. And that's Tank.
That's great. Yeah. Well, we all love your whole family, Brandon. And again, I want to thank you for sharing your lives with us. Everybody's just enjoying you immensely. And we'll have you back next week as long as those girls out there, those pregnant girls of yours, don't decide that today's the day.
Oh God, no! It's a little too early. We need another month of bacon on those little babies. So we'll. But when that happens, then we'll probably be putting a whole bunch more. Some of it'll maybe be redundant, but you know what? Every day's a different day, even when you're doing the same thing. So, but we really appreciate you guys, and our friendship is very dear to me, dear to all of us, and we thank you for doing this with us. It's great. It's fun. And we hope we can just continue to educate and entertain.
Yeah. Thank you, Brandon. Say hello to your whole family, including the boss and the boss's boss.
I'll do that.
Okay.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thanks again.